All right, so I figured that today I would talk about add camera or blank camera, which basically all it does is adds a camera. So the reason I'm setting up the scene like this is so that you can see that when I add a camera, it will replace this camera as the active camera. So I think I can do this in a one take. So let's try it out. Let's see. How do I want to start this off? One of the most important things, not the most important thing, but one of the most common types of renderings in CG is the old turntable. All right, so let's see. Rendering turntables is one of the most common things that you'll find yourself having to do in CG, and we wanted to do our best to make it as easy for you as possible. So I think that angle can work. All right, this one I could sound more more awake. All right, let's do this. Turntables is one of the most common renderings you'll find yourself having to make in the world of CG, and for that reason we wanted to add something to hops to make rendering turntables a lot easier. Formerly, I would take the camera, add an empty, put a driver on the empty, and then parent the camera to the empty, and then it would just rotate in perpetuity. However, thinking over it a couple of times, I've realized that that's an abhorrent amount of keystrokes, and it'd probably be better if we automated it. So we'll press Q, and under the operations menu, there's an option for add camera. And when we add the camera, it will just add the camera, add the empty, add the driver. And if we press F9, we can actually see the settings that we get in camera rig. We can choose how many rotations happens within the frame range. We can choose if we get a bounce camera instead of a regular camera. We can also choose if we want it to be the active camera or if we want the actual active camera to remain active. And that's good just in case you ever want to change between shots or anything like that. But for me personally, I always make it the active camera. The next thing I like to do after adding the camera is really setting up that first frame. So for me personally, I like to just kind of get a good vantage view and then just press Control Alt Numpad 0 in order to set the camera to that particular view. And then after turning off overlays, you're able to just let it play. Full disclaimer, I set my frames to be 9,000. I didn't want to go over 9,000 for this, but I did set them to 9,000, which will result in the smoothest animation you've ever seen. One of the good things about drivers and cameras and the way that we have it set up is that if we were to lower our animation to be 250 frames, you can see that the animation takes place over 250 frames and will go continuously forever. So if you're, like me and you like making looping GIFs that never show an end or a beginning, then this is the way to do it for you. In fact, we can set it up to 120, really depending on your time budget. Sometimes you want a turntable that is, maybe 9,001 frames because, I lied. I'll go over 9,000 for you guys. But if you set it up to something high and you just leave this rendering, you're going to get the most beautiful turntable, just really showcasing your model the way that it wants to be shown. Alternatively to the general turntable camera, we also have the bounce cam. So normally I would select the camera and then I would shift G to select its parent, and then I would select the camera again in order to delete it, in order to clean it perfectly. But you could also just delete the camera. I mean, an empty is an empty, but it's also nice to clean things up behind yourself. So we'll just press Q, and with nothing selected, we also have an option for add camera inside the nothing menu. So we will just add a camera this way, except I will choose a bounce camera instead. And this will give us a bounce camera that will actually kind of jump between the beginning and the end a little bit differently than your traditional turntable. And this is just something that was suggested by someone on Twitter that seemed like a good idea. And if we lower our frames down to something like 600 and we just let it play, you'll see that the camera will go in one direction and then stop and then begin going the other direction, but it still has that continuous fill that you can come to expect from adding a camera from us using the add camera system. But whenever it comes to just getting in there and just presenting your model, add camera is probably your fastest way to get there. In fact, just to take this a step further, another way that I like using cameras is to change between shots. So right here, things actually get a little bit boring. So if we go back to the beginning, we can actually select the camera that's inside the empty, and with our mouse over the timeline, if you press Control B, you will bind the camera to that marker. And so we can actually go here where things are, looking a little less interesting, and we can select our first camera that we never deleted and press Control B to set a marker. So even though the timeline's a little compressed, you can see that the camera changes from active camera to the secondary camera. And this is one of my favorite ways to work, actually. In fact, with us in this camera selected, we'll just drag the PP up to get rid of the border. And we will just, work this camera. So, we'll start zoomed in. We'll press I. Lock rot. And we'll just pull it out at 500. So something like that. And then I lock rot. And we can actually select the first camera now that's within sight and press Control B. And we've now created an animation for this camera, and then at the end of the animation rebound it to the initial camera. So if we go back to the beginning and we actually begin playing, turn off overlays for this, we can see that the bounce animation will begin playing, and eventually it'll get boring and switch to the other camera, which pulls out, just showing us kind of a more impressive way to look at this cube. In fact, if I really wanted to baby this to get exactly where I wanted, I would make it actually change cameras right about here. That's as much blank face on a camera shot I'll tolerate. And we can select the camera, locate the keyframe for the movement, and just move it over to match the frame. So whenever it switches, it still has that nice switch to it. And this isn't even to talk about basically, selecting these keyframes and changing the bounce interpolation to get a very specific result. In fact, maybe we want to change it back a little sooner. Nope. Maybe we want to change it back about there. So I enjoy dragging these shots out to just kind of get a good look at things. And that's not even to say that you can select the empty and scale the empty on the fly in order to get some really interesting shots as well. We're not going to mess with that shot. But for this one, let's say we wanted to turn this into a really grandiose shot where we zoom in on that beautiful detail. So we'll set a scale keyframe, and right about here we'll zoom in and press I and set a scale keyframe. So once it transitions back, it will begin this jump to here, where then it can turn away, and right about here we'll keyframe the scale, and right about frame frame 900, we could press Alt S and just set the camera back to what it's supposed to be. And we can press I, set our keyframe, and even though our animation is set up to be only 600 frames, it'll never get to where we're looking. So I'll press Control C to copy my current frame, and we'll paste that in the end frame. And if we play this back, it'll be a slightly different animation because part of our cameras are being driven by drivers, which is based on the frame end. And then we have our other cameras that are just placed in the 3D view for us to mess with at our own whim. So we just let our animation play back, and that is one sexy way to show a cube. In fact, I'm about to grab this cube, take it home, and begin taking even more photographs of it. Maybe slap some lights on this baby, but that's a talk for another day. But I just wanted to do a video just kind of giving a cursory overview to blank camera or add camera in HardOps and how to get started with it. Just one of my favorite ways to create a quick turntable and just show these cubes the way that I want the world to see them. In fact, as I look at this shot, it makes me want to really record a screencast of that just to post on the Twitters. So, let's go ahead and do that using ShareX, my favorite screen grabbing utility. And we'll just let this animation play while we catch a recording on the way out. And that's how you mess up a recording, is stopping it in the middle of your recording. So let's try that again. We put the camera back at the beginning, and I like to get some black bars on the side because I'm a weirdo. Let you know that you're in the simulation. I don't know if I like that particular shot. It shows a lot of back face. I would have changed that camera to be something even cooler. In fact, I just might do it. Let's see, where's that shot at? It was right here. It was looking kind of terrible. And then we zoom in and it just, I don't know. I mean, it looks good right there. Do I even want that shot to exist? I mean, we could give this marker to another camera. So we go back to 500. And let's just add a camera. You know, this is the after tutorial now. This is the part where I keep tweaking stuff after the tutorial. You know, you just can't stop sometimes. Like I said, I'm always trying to keep the videos. I'm trying to keep the videos short now until I hit a certain goal, and then I'll go back to the longer content. So with this camera selected, I'll press Control B. Now that's the active camera. We'll give it some PP. And we just want to get some good cube in this shot. And press I for location. And all the way up to the transition, which is 1 frame down. We'll just do a shot kind of jumping to the bottom. And we'll just keyframe location. So now we have this shot, just the cube, you guys. It's just all about the cube, just saying. So let's see, I bet we can interject a shot of it elsewhere too. But this initial play is looking pretty good to me. I mean, I'm no cameraman. I just like to just get in and have a little fun with Blender and different aspects of it. So, you know, all these tools I refer to as blanks, it's because the ideas haven't been completely established. So I do plan to establish them and nail them down into concrete as time goes on. Oh God, you know, let's go back through this long shot here. So this area, I'm not gonna be able to let that live. I'm glad we did do a camera close up. There we go. So that actually is pretty good. So we just let that go down and voila. I actually like that shot. We'll turn off all the cameras being displayed and let's get that recording. That's such a nice cube, you guys. I'm just saying, you know, I've never really wanted to take a lot of cubes home, but I would take that cube home. Just saying. It's a good looking cube. We'll save this as Qbox 107, my 107th test of, you know, quick or power save. I love power save. One of my favorite tools now, just saying. It's hard to make a tool that becomes my favorite, but I definitely am looking for simplicity in its use. Literally opposite of Hops. Hops is my attempt at automating myself, and you know, the thing that you guys don't get is I'm always changing, so our automation systems are always changing, but it's for the better. You know, I want to automate the best version of myself. If I were to continue automating myself in the C# thread long ago, things would be more limited these days. So let's take a look at our shots here. And where is that thing at? You know, I knew that thing was going to sneak up on me. Let's see, received an email. Always an email. have actually completed this recording in like 15 minutes on the behind the scenes, so getting better. We look at the intro, it blacks out, and then bam, we're adding our camera, we're talking about cameras, and then we're messing with cameras, and I'm in and out under 10 minutes, so no one should get mad at me. Okay, that video's done. So we can just grab that and post it to the Twatters or to the YouTubes. So let's see. We'll just upload this, and this director's cut is done.